In the past 6 days, 3 separate parts of the United States have been hit by catastrophic flash flooding. Not heavy rain, not a wet week. Flash flood emergencies, the rarest and most severe warning the National Weather Service issues, the one reserved for situations where people are expected to die. On July 16th and 17th, the Texas Hill Country flooded for the second July in a row. A river gauge in the town of Comfort rose 25 feet in a single hour. On July 17th, in a canyon in southern Utah, a family of 5 was killed in minutes. The father was a fire captain, a man who spent his career pulling other people out of exactly this kind of thing. And on the night of July 21st in West Virginia, 7 inches of rain fell in about 6 hours. A creek near Buckhannon rose more than 8 feet in under 5 hours, and shattered a record that had stood since 1985. The governor declared a state of emergency in all 55 counties. 310 National Guard troops were deployed, 19 helicopters, 85 water rescues. Interstate 79 closed. In one county, 911 service went down entirely. As I record this, some of those residents are still unaccounted for. 3 states, 6 days. And when 3 disasters land that close together, the question everybody asks is the obvious one. Is something happening? I'm going to give you a straight answer to that. It isn't the answer the internet is giving, and it isn't the reassuring one either. It sits somewhere in between, and it's more unsettling than both. But first I want to walk you through what actually happened in each of these places, because the details matter, and in one of them, something happened that has never happened before in an American flood, and almost nobody is talking about it. I'm Adam Cross. If you want the real data and no invented drama, subscribe. We do this every week. And drop a comment right now. Have you ever been through a flash flood? Not a slow river rise over days, the kind that arrives in minutes. Tell me where you were and how much warning you got. That last part matters more than you think, and you'll see why by the end of this. Start with Texas, because Texas is the one the whole country was already watching. Last July, on the 4th, the Guadalupe River rose in the dark and killed at least 139 people, 117 of them in Kerr County alone. Among the dead were 25 girls and 2 counselors from a summer camp on the riverbank. That was 380 days ago. This month, between July 12th and 17th, close to 30 inches of rain fell across parts of south-central Texas. 4 counties recorded more than a foot. The Guadalupe came up again. So did the Llano and the Pedernales. The National Weather Service issued multiple flash flood emergencies for the Hill Country, a warning it describes as reserved for exceedingly rare, life-threatening situations. The numbers are hard to hold in your head. At center point, the Guadalupe crested at 37.94 feet, just under last year. But downstream at Comfort, the gauge rose 25 feet in 1 hour and crested more than a foot higher than last July. 25 feet. In 60 minutes. That is not a river rising, that is a wall arriving. In Uvalde County, the FM 481 bridge collapsed outright. Around Uvalde and Zavala counties, local crews rescued more than 300 people. A man died after being swept away in a recreational vehicle. A second person died in Kerr County. First responders cleared about 50 homes in flood-prone areas, and the water reached places it never had. The code enforcement officer in Ingram, a man who has lived in his neighborhood a long time, said he had never seen it flood before. It flooded that day. There was also a detail from Kerrville I have not been able to stop thinking about. The Sidney Baker Street Bridge had to be closed, because the barge crews were using to search the river got stuck underneath it. That barge was searching for the last 2 people still missing from last year's flood. This year's flood interrupted the search for last year's dead. But here is the thing about Texas that separates it from everything else in this video, and it's the reason I'm making it. 2 people died. Last year, in the same river system, 139 did. This year, the rainfall was more widespread, the flooding covered more counties, and in at least one gauge, the water came up higher. And 2 people died. That is not luck. I'll come back to exactly why that happened, because it's the most important thing in this entire story. And it's the part that almost every channel covering these floods has skipped. Now Utah, and I'm going to tell this one carefully because it's the hardest. On Friday, July 17th, at about 11:30 in the morning, A family arrived at the Sunglow campground outside Bicknell, in Wayne County, south-central Utah, Red Rock country. They had come to hike and go canyoneering. The father was Spencer Long, a captain with Provo Fire and Rescue, who had served more than a decade. His wife Katrina was a former Mona City Council member and had co-founded a business in the area. With them were 3 of their 4 children, their sons Reed, Thane, and Gage. That evening, deputies from the Wayne County Sheriff's Office were called to the campground after a body was found. They located 3 deceased males in a wash near the campground and realized they were looking for a missing family. 2 more were found dead later the same day. All 5, Spencer, Katrina, and their 3 boys. Their daughter Lydia had not gone on the trip. She is the only member of her immediate family still alive. During the search, 2 more men were found dead in the same area, also believed to have been caught by the flooding. Now, why did this happen to a man whose entire professional life was emergency response? Because of the way flash floods work in the American West. It's a mechanism that catches locals and experts, not just tourists. In canyon country, the rain that kills you does not fall on you. It falls upstream, sometimes miles away, sometimes over a ridge you cannot see, sometimes under a sky that from where you are standing looks completely clear. That water gets funneled into a narrow slot with rock walls on both sides and nowhere to spread out. So instead of spreading, it stacks. It arrives as a moving wall, carrying boulders and logs and everything else the canyon has collected. You do not hear it in time. You do not outrun it. And by the time the water at your feet turns muddy, which is the warning sign the Park Service tells people to watch for, you often have seconds. The danger is worse below a burn scar, where a wildfire has stripped away the vegetation that used to slow the water down and hardened the soil so it repels rain instead of absorbing it. Utah has fresh burn scars this year from the Cottonwood Fire and others. After the Long family died, Zion National Park closed the Narrows and every slot canyon in the park. Flash flood watches have continued across southern Utah since. And then, on the night of Tuesday the 21st, West Virginia, the ground there was already loaded. More than 2 inches of rain had fallen across the state that Saturday, so the soil was saturated before anything else arrived. Saturated ground does not absorb, it sheds. Then the storms came in over the north-central counties and stalled. More than 7 inches fell over Upshur County in roughly 6 hours. The National Weather Service issued a flash flood emergency and attached a designation you almost never see, PDS, particularly dangerous situation. It's reserved for the most extreme, most life-threatening events on the board, and most people watching this have never heard it used for a flood. Sand Run, a creek near Buckhannon, rose more than 8 feet in under 5 hours and crested above 10.63 feet. The old record was 8.34 feet, set in 1985 during one of the worst flood events in that region's history. It didn't break the record, it crushed it by more than 2 feet. Governor Patrick Morrisey declared a state of emergency for all 55 counties on Tuesday night and sent in the National Guard, eventually 310 personnel, with 19 Guard and state police helicopters, either flying rescue missions or standing by. The State Division of Natural Resources alone performed at least 85 water rescues. The city of Buckhannon issued an immediate evacuation order early Wednesday for parts of the city, citing rapidly escalating hazardous conditions. Interstate 79 closed near Weston, so did US Route 48, and a long list of secondary roads. In Fayetteville, a sinkhole opened up and swallowed a vehicle outside a bar. In one county, 911 service went down while people were still calling it. Lewis and Upshur counties have about 40,000 residents between them. The Lewis County Commissioner posted that the devastation across the county was extensive. 3 shelters opened, housing more than 100 people. And here is the detail that gives this one its weight. Almost exactly 10 years ago, in late June of 2016, heavy rain fell for hours over these same areas of West Virginia and killed 23 people. Same state, same counties, same month, a decade apart. So, 3 states, 6 days. Is something happening? Let me deal with the version of this that is already circulating, because it always circulates, and then give you the real answer. These three events are not connected to each other. Not in the way people mean when they ask. There is no single storm, no coordinated system, no weather weapon, no cloud seeding program, no chemtrail. The Texas flooding came out of a slow-moving system pulling deep tropical moisture up from the Gulf. Utah's came from North American monsoon thunderstorms, which are a completely normal feature of southwestern summers. West Virginia's came from a stalled cold front over the Appalachians. 3 different regions, 3 different mechanisms, 3 different air masses, thousands of miles apart. Anyone selling you a single hidden cause behind all 3 is selling you something. It's also true that mid-July is flood season across much of the United States. Heavy rain in the hill country, monsoon flooding in Utah, thunderstorm flooding in Appalachia, all normal summer events. Cluster 3 in 1 week and you have a bad week, not necessarily a broken planet. But there is a real thing happening underneath all 3, and it is not a conspiracy. It's a single line of 19th century physics, and it is the honest answer to the question this video is asking. It's called the Clausius-Clapeyron relation, and what it says is this: the amount of water vapor air can hold depends on its temperature. For roughly every 1 degree Celsius that the atmosphere warms, it can hold about 7% more moisture. That is not a projection or a model. It's a measured property of air, established in the 1800s, and it does not care what anybody thinks about it. A storm is, in simple terms, a machine that gathers whatever water is in the air around it and drops it. Run that same machine in an atmosphere carrying 7% more water, and it drops more water. Same storm, same duration, bigger total. And rainfall does not translate into flooding in a straight line. Ground has an absorption capacity. Storm drains have a design capacity. Rivers have a channel capacity. Each is fine right up until it's overwhelmed, and then it fails all at once. So a modest increase in water in the sky produces a much larger increase in how often a system gets pushed past its limit. That is why the language around these events keeps sounding the same. Records not edged past, but shattered. A creek beating a 1985 mark by 2 feet. A gauge rising 25 feet in an hour. A neighborhood that has never flooded, flooding. The storms are not becoming coordinated. The atmosphere they're forming in is holding more water than it used to, and infrastructure built for the old numbers is meeting the new ones. That is the whole answer. It's less dramatic than a conspiracy and considerably harder to do anything about. Which brings us back to Texas, and the thing I said I'd come back to. Because there is one genuine piece of good news in this entire video, and it is the most useful thing in it. After last year's flood killed 139 people along the Guadalupe, sirens were installed along the river. This month, for the first time, those sirens went off. They sounded, and campers along the Guadalupe were alerted and fled the rising water. Every children's summer camp in Kerr County confirmed its campers were safe. In a flood that was more widespread than last year's, that covered more counties, that in at least one place came up higher. 2 people died instead of 139. That is not weather being kinder. The weather was worse. That is a warning system that did not exist 13 months ago, doing exactly the job it was installed to do. I want that to land, because the story of these 3 floods is really a story about warning time. Texas got warning. The sirens fired, the alerts went out, people moved. 2 dead. West Virginia got some. The Weather Service issued the emergency, the governor had declared a state of preparedness earlier that day, and hundreds of rescues happened in the dark. Extensive devastation, but a response already moving before the water peaked. Utah got none. Not because anyone failed, but because a slot canyon does not give any. The rain fell somewhere they could not see, and by the time the water reached them, there was no decision left to make. That's the spectrum, and almost everything that determines which end of it a community lands on is decided before the rain starts. So here is what to actually do with this, because information without action is just anxiety. Know whether you're in a flash flood zone, and know the answer changes. Flood maps go out of date, and burn scars create new flood zones within weeks of a fire. If there's been a wildfire upstream of you recently, your risk went up, and the map may not know it. Turn on wireless emergency alerts on your phone. In West Virginia and Texas, those alerts and the sirens were the warning system. 6 inches of moving water can knock an adult over. 12 inches will float most cars. Never drive around a barricade, and never drive through water when you can't see the road surface. You can't know whether the road is still under there. In Uvalde County this month, a bridge collapsed entirely. And in Canyon Country, check the forecast for the whole watershed, not the spot where you're standing. Blue sky above you means nothing. If the water turns muddy or starts rising, leave immediately. Do not stop to pack up gear or take down a tent. The Park Service guidance says this explicitly, and the reason it's phrased that bluntly is that people have died going back for equipment. Get to high ground. Not out of the canyon. Up. 3 states in 6 days. Not connected. Not coordinated. Not anybody's plot. Just an atmosphere carrying more water than the one our bridges, our storm drains, and our flood maps were designed around, meeting 3 different pieces of American geography in the same week and beating all 3. Texas has been hit 2 Julys in a row. West Virginia was hit almost exactly 10 years to the month after 23 people died in the same counties. In Utah, a man who spent his life responding to emergencies had no warning at all when his own arrived. The one thing that separated the outcomes was how much time people had. And in Texas, that time came from sirens that somebody paid for, installed and tested, in the 13 months between one flood and the next. That's the whole story. The rain is going to keep getting heavier. The only variable we actually control is how many minutes we give people before it reaches them. If you got something out of this, subscribe. This is what we do here every week. And leave that comment. Have you been through a flash flood? Where were you, and how much warning did you get? I read every one, and the map you build in the comments is more honest than anything on the news. Share this with someone in Texas, Utah, or West Virginia, and with anyone who lives downstream of a burn scar and doesn't know it yet. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.